SpaceX is paying $60 billion for an AI coding company. Microsoft saw the same deal and walked away at $50 billion. If you are considering the SpaceX IPO this summer, that walkaway sits inside the prospectus you are about to read. The CEO selling is just 25 years old. The single number that will justify the $60 billion price has not been disclosed. SpaceX decides whether to complete the acquisition after the IPO opens, after you are already inside. The company SpaceX wants to acquire is called Cursor. It makes an AI-powered code editor. Think of it like autocomplete, but instead of finishing your sentence, it finishes your entire software program. A developer describes what they need built. Cursor writes the code. The developer reviews it, edits it, ships it. 67% of Fortune 500 companies use it every day. That is not a niche startup with a few thousand users. That is the majority of the largest companies in the world running their engineering teams on a single tool. In February 2026, Cursor became the fastest company in history to reach $2 billion in annualized recurring revenue. The previous record holder took roughly 3 years to reach that number. Cursor did it in under 2. I went back and checked that number before including it here. The company behind Cursor is called Anysphere. It was founded in 2022 by 4 students at MIT. Before Cursor, the same team built 2 products that both failed. The first was a coding tool for mechanical engineers. It flopped. The second was a message encryption product, also dead. Then they looked at what AI could do with code. They initially dismissed the idea as too competitive. Then they changed their minds. The CEO is Michael Truer. He is 25 years old. In an interview at Y Combinator, he described the moment the team committed. We had a ton of conviction about that, and we had a ton of excitement about that. And so at some point, we just decided to go all in. 2 failed products, a market they had called too crowded to enter. Complete commitment anyway. In December 2025, Cursor was growing faster than almost any software company in history. Truer published a public warning about how people were using his own tool. He called the behavior vibe coding. His exact words: if you close your eyes and have AIs build things with shaky foundations, as you add more flaws, things start to crumble. He did not have to say that. He was worth over $1 billion at that point. He said it anyway. Now, Cursor's valuation timeline. August 2024, $400 million. December 2024, $2.6 billion. June 2025, $9.9 billion. November 2025, $29.3 billion. February 2026, raising a new round at the proposed $50 billion. That is the price the market set in February 2026. SpaceX walked in shortly after and paid $10 billion above it. If SpaceX uses shares issued after the IPO to pay for this deal, the ownership of every other shareholder shrinks by 3.4% on day 2. That number is not in the public filing yet. Hold that, we are coming back to it. The headline called this an acquisition. It is not yet. What SpaceX announced on April 21, 2026 is an option agreement. SpaceX paid for the right to acquire Cursor later this year, after its IPO. Or if SpaceX chooses not to complete the full acquisition, there is a second option. It can pay $10 billion for the joint work the 2 companies are doing together and stop there. SpaceX decides which option to exercise after the IPO opens, after retail investors are already in. The decision about which deal you are funding has not been made yet. Let me explain why the structure was built this way. SpaceX filed a confidential S-1 with the SEC on April 1, 2026. That is the document that starts the clock on the public listing. To amend that document before the listing, SpaceX would need to go back to regulators and update the filing. That creates delays. SpaceX did not want the Cursor deal locked into the IPO filing before terms were final. So it signed an option agreement instead. The plan is to pay for Cursor using SpaceX shares issued after the company is publicly traded. The capital that funds this purchase comes from the IPO. Now, go back to February 2026. Cursor was raising its next funding round at the proposed $50 billion valuation. Multiple investors were ready to commit money at that number. SpaceX came in before that round closed and offered $60 billion for the acquisition option. The funding round was cancelled. The investors who had been ready to put in money at $50 billion did not get a chance to. SpaceX preempted the process before competing bids could form. It paid $10 billion above the price the market had just set, and it built in an exit. If Cursor's numbers do not hold, SpaceX pays $10 billion for the partnership work and works. Elon has a flaw on his downside. The people buying the IPO do not. The question is fair. SpaceX makes rockets and satellites. What does it need with a code editor? On March 13, 2026, Elon posted this on X. XAI was not built right first time around, so it's being rebuilt from the foundations up. I covered the full story behind that sentence in my last video on this channel. Link is in the description. Watch that first if you have not seen it. The short version for this video. SpaceX spent $13 billion building one of the most powerful AI computing clusters on the planet. In 2025, it generated $500 million in AI revenue. The two people who led the model research both left in February 2026. The AI was declared broken by its own creator 19 days before the IPO funding landed. Cursor is SpaceX's answer to that problem. SpaceX owns a computing cluster in Memphis called Colossus. It has the equivalent processing power of 1 million high-end GPUs. A top gaming PC runs on 1 GPU. Colossus runs on the equivalent of 1 million of them wired together as a single system. The bottleneck for any AI system is not the hardware, it is the training data, specifically the quality of that data. Cursor processes millions of developer sessions every single day. Real engineers, real companies, real problems, real solutions written in real code. That is the highest quality training data for a coding AI exists anyway. Every session is a labeled example of how an expert thinks through a technical problem. Cursor's data combined with Colossus' computing power is the specific combination SpaceX has been missing. This deal is not a product acquisition. It is a data acquisition built around a product. And there is already evidence this AI strategy is producing real results. Starlink's customer support line is now handled by Grok, XAI's AI model. A caller reaches a voice agent that identifies itself as AI. 70% of support calls get resolved before they reach a human. 1 in 5 people who call ended up buying Starlink on that same call. Grok is not a research project. It is running customer operations and closing sales today. That is the bull case for this acquisition. Cursor's training data closes the gap between Grok and the leading models from OpenAI and Anthropic. A rebuilt Grok becomes genuinely competitive. The combined business justifies the price. Once XAI has Cursor's data running through Colossus, I want to do a full breakdown on this channel. Grok versus GPT versus Claude versus Gemini, head-to-head with the updated numbers. If you want to be there when that video drops, subscribe now and turn on notifications. That case is real. I want to hear from you. Does the training data argument make the $60 billion price make sense to you? Or does the deal structure concern you more than the strategy does? The option, the timing, the escape hedge? Tell me in the comments. Some of you are already forming the argument. SpaceX has the compute. Cursor has the data. Grok is already working at scale. The math holds. That is a fair read. Then I went looking for the one number that stress tests the entire thesis. I could not find it. For any subscription business, the single most important metric is net revenue retention. Let me explain what that means. Say I open Daniel's Burger Shop. In year 1, 100 regular customers come through every week. In year 2, I tell you now I have 200 customers every week. This sounds like growth. But what I do not tell you is whether the original 100 are still coming back. or whether 80 of them went to the burger place down the street and 180 new ones replaced them. Net retention revenue tells you which one it is. Is the growth built on a loyal foundation, or is it a bucket that leaks while new customers fill it from the top? For a company being valued at $60 billion, that number is the foundation of the entire valuation argument. Cursor has not disclosed it. The $2 billion ARR figure is company reported, not audited, not independently verified. The enterprise contracts that make up 60% of Cursor's revenue have not been confirmed by any outside party. I want to be precise here. I am not saying the number is wrong. I'm saying it has not been shown. Those are two different things. What Cursor has disclosed: individual subscriber churn of 3 to 5% per month, which is strong for this type of product. A free to paid conversion rate of 35%. A trial to subscription rate of 42% within 30 days. These numbers are real, they are good. But none of them tell you whether the enterprise clients who make up the majority of revenue are expanding or quietly preparing to let their contracts expire. That is the question that justifies the $60 billion valuation. The answer is not public. The number that changes what you are buying has not been released. When the SpaceX prospectus becomes public, look for two specific things: whether the Cursor acquisition option is listed as a contingent liability, and whether Cursor's net revenue retention has been disclosed anywhere in the deal documentation. Now come back to the 3.4% from earlier. That is what existing shareholders take on if SpaceX completes the full acquisition using publicly traded shares. SpaceX issues new shares to pay Cursor's owners. Your slice of the company shrinks by 3.4% on day 2. That cost becomes real after you are already in. Now, the company that saw this deal first. Microsoft did not miss Cursor. It found it before SpaceX did. Microsoft owns GitHub. GitHub is where the majority of the world's software code is stored, reviewed, and maintained. It is the infrastructure layer underneath every software company on the planet. To protect that position from tools like Cursor, Microsoft built GitHub Copilot, an AI coding assistant built to live inside the GitHub system. GitHub Copilot is Cursor's direct competitor. When Cursor started taking significant market share, Microsoft's response was obvious. Buy it, absorb the technology, strengthen Copilot's position. Microsoft has done exactly this before. It paid $7.5 billion for GitHub in 2018. It invested $13 billion in OpenAI to anchor its AI strategy. When Microsoft sees a serious threat to its developer platform, it acquires. It looked at Cursor. It had analysts model the business. It walked away. That leaves one more question that valuation does not answer. Cursor's power is developer trust. Engineers chose it over every alternative, including tools built by the companies they work for. A rocket company owning the tool that writes code is a new variable in that calculation. That code does not appear in the $60 billion number either. I have been covering this IPO from multiple angles now. After this research, what I keep coming back to is not the valuation, it is the sequencing. The deal that defines what SpaceX does with AI was structured and announced before the S1 became public. The number that justifies the price has not been disclosed. The decision about which version of this deal actually closes will be made by someone who already knows those numbers. I do not know how to price that gap, and I'm not sure the founding will tell me how to either. 3 things I'm watching. 1. The public S1. SpaceX filed confidentially on April 1, 2026. When that document becomes public, look for whether the Cursor option appears as a contingent liability, whether net revenue retention has been disclosed in the deal terms, and whether the acquisition is structured as all stock, all cash, or a combination. Each answer changes the dilution math for every IPO buyer. 2. Cursor's 2026 revenue trajectory. The $2 billion ARR figure was reported in February 2026. By the time the IPO opens this summer, 2 more quarters of data will exist. If enterprise revenue is expanding, the missing NRR story weakens. If it is flat or contracting, the $60 billion price looks different. 3. Which option SpaceX exercises? The deal has two paths: $60 billion to own Cursor, or $10 billion for the joint work and no full acquisition. SpaceX will know Cursor's retention numbers before retail investors do. Watch which option they choose and when that announcement comes. SpaceX is paying $60 billion for a company the market price at $50 billion 1 month ago. The CEO selling is 25 years old. The company with the most to lose by not owning it ran the numbers and walked away, and the purchase closes after you invest. When the prospectus lands with the Cursor option inside, ask yourself one question: did the people who structured this deal already know which version it would be before you had a chance to read it? Subscribe and turn on notifications. When that prospectus goes public, I will be here.